After 7 years building my husband's EdTech startup, his mother sued to erase my name. I kept the books, built the pitch deck, pitched in every way that counted. But when the money came in, they erased me like I was never there. She filed the lawsuit. I filed something else. A document they forgot I kept. From the very beginning. I still remember the sound. The envelope sliding across my apartment floor. Legal notice. Her name on the sender. Not his. His mother. After everything I did, she was the one who came for me. 7 years. 3 jobs. A degree I shelved. My 20s gone, so he could chase a dream. And now they said I never mattered. No role. No stake. Just support. Just. His wife. I stared at the papers. My hands trembled, but my heart quiet. This wasn't panic. This was something colder. Sharpened. Focused. They wanted to erase me? I let out a breath. Then walked to the shelf, pulled down a blue binder, and opened to the first page. My name was right there. In ink. Signed. Paris. I met Dylan at a Women in Tech networking event. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was tagging along with a friend who knew someone on the panel. He smiled like he belonged in every room, and somehow he always did. At the time, I was just finishing my MBA at Wharton. I had 3 job offers on the table, 2 in New York, 1 in London. All in finance. All fast track. I had a 5-year plan, a passport full of stamps, and a LinkedIn profile that practically glowed. Dylan had none of that. What he had was a vision. He talked about an educational app he wanted to build, something to help underfunded schools track student progress better, tailor learning modules, use data in real time. His passion was magnetic. He spoke like someone who believed he could change the world if someone just gave him a server and 6 uninterrupted months. I remember thinking, he's brilliant. But he's drowning. No team. No plan. No money. And somehow I said yes. It started small. He'd ask me to review his pitch deck. Then I helped restructure it. Then I built a spreadsheet for projections. Then I found him 2 angel investors to talk to. By the time I graduated, I had declined London. When my mentor asked why, I said, I'm investing in something different. I told myself I was building something with Dylan. A future. A mission. It felt righteous. We moved in together 3 months later. He set up his desk in the living room. I took a consulting job part-time. When the app stalled because he couldn't afford the prototype phase, I cashed out half my signing bonus and wrote the first check. We framed it like a loan. He promised me equity, 49%, minimum, he said. I wouldn't even be doing this without you. That line would echo years later like a cruel joke. Within the first year, we were cohabiting, co-working, and co-founding, unofficially, of course. I handled admin, finances, some of the content work. He coded. I worked 2 jobs. He networked. At least, that's what he said every time he came home late smelling like gin and stale air. Still, I defended him. He's a visionary, I told my sister when she asked why I was the only one paying rent. He's trying, I said to my father when he offered to cover my Cobra. I told everyone the same thing I told myself. It's just not his season yet. We married at City Hall after his seed round finally came through. It wasn't much, barely enough to justify the cheap champagne. His mother, Susan, wore a cream suit and a smirk. You could have done better, she whispered to him when she thought I wasn't close enough to hear. I was. I pretended I didn't. After the ceremony, she pulled me aside. You seem capable, she said, sipping her wine. But Dylan's destined for something rare. Don't hold him back. Hold him back? I'd been holding us up. But I nodded, smiled, played nice. Because that's what you do when you're the supportive one. The company, Smart Seeds, started gaining traction in year 2. Still no salary for either of us. Dylan insisted everything go back into development. I kept working admin jobs. Took on freelance budgeting gigs. At night, I updated investor reports while Dylan scrolled through TikToks for market research. My old boss from Goldman emailed me once, asking if I'd be open to joining a fintech firm. I didn't even answer. I told myself this was the hard part. The grind. The test. But slowly, something in me started to quiet. Opportunities dried up. So did my wardrobe. My world got smaller. I stopped buying lattes. I cut my own hair. And one day, I realized. I hadn't been called by my maiden name in over a year. I hadn't updated my resume since the wedding. I hadn't looked in a mirror and recognized myself since the last tax season. I was no longer Meadowchen. I was Dylan's wife. His investor. His assistant. His foundation. But never his equal. Not in his mother's eyes. And eventually, not in his either. At first, the changes were subtle. Dylan stopped asking for my feedback on investor calls. Then he stopped sharing pitch decks at all. Meetings that used to happen at our kitchen table now happened on the go. His go. Without me. I noticed his phone stayed face down more often. He started locking his laptop. He said he was just being cautious now that we're scaling. I told myself it made sense. That growth required structure. But deep down, I felt it. I was being edged out. Then came Rebecca. He introduced her as an executive assistant with operational experience. I recognized her instantly. She had been one of the interns I mentored during a university outreach program 2 years ago. She used to ask me for career advice. Now she barely made eye contact. She wore tailored suits, knew all the tech buzzwords, and laughed at jokes I'd heard Dylan use for years. At the office launch party, I brought a tray of handmade appetizers. No one asked me who I was. I was introduced once, Dylan's wife, then left to stand alone near the wine table while he and Rebecca floated from group to group, glowing with promise. His mother, Susan, arrived late. As always, perfect. Crisp white blouse, soft pink lipstick, and an air of judgment that settled in every room she entered. "Darling," she said, adjusting Dylan's collar, "this is just the beginning." Then she looked at me, paused, smiled. "The napkin station could use a refresh, Meadow. Would you mind?" I blinked, then nodded. Because that's what I did. That's what I always did. Later that night, I told Dylan I felt out of place. That I didn't know where I stood anymore. He said, "You're overthinking it." He kissed my forehead, scrolled through emails, and fell asleep before I finished brushing my teeth. A week later, they hired a CFO. Someone from his MBA cohort. Someone not me. When I asked why, Dylan said, "We just need someone with experience at scale." I'd managed every account since the beginning, taxes, budgets, audits. But apparently that didn't count anymore. Susan started showing up more. She called it supporting the brand. She had opinions on everything: color palettes, pricing tiers, even investor gift baskets. When I pushed back, Dylan said, "Mom has good instincts. And she knows people." The company began doing press. There were articles, interviews, photos of Dylan shaking hands, cutting ribbons, sipping espresso beside his incredible team. I wasn't in a single one. Not even a mention. The final straw came on a Tuesday. I stopped by the office to surprise Dylan with lunch. Rebecca met me at the door. "Oh, Meadow," she said, glancing at her Apple Watch. "He's in back-to-backs all afternoon. Next time, maybe call ahead." The walls behind her were lined with framed milestones: first round closed, beta launch, early press clippings. I scanned every photo. I was nowhere. I stood there holding a paper bag with his favorite grilled cheese, and realized I had become something terrifying. Not the wife, not the partner, not even the assistant. Just an extra. And extras don't get speaking roles. It happened slowly, then all at once. The official company website updated its About Us page. I wasn't there, not even in the founding story. It said Dylan started Smart Seeds alone, with a bold vision and a relentless drive. No mention of who built the financial model, who funded the first prototype, who wrote the original copy for every single page. It was like someone had gone through our history with a scalpel and removed me clean. I asked Dylan about it softly, half laughing, as if it didn't matter. He blinked. "It's just marketing," he said. "They're simplifying the story for investors." Then he turned back to his phone. That was it. No apology. No pause. That weekend, a regional business magazine did a 4-page spread on Smart Seeds. The headline: "The Man Behind the Movement." Photos of Dylan in sleek conference rooms. A full paragraph praising his mother's invaluable support. A sidebar interview with Rebecca on operational excellence. I wasn't in a single frame. Even though I'd reviewed the investor pipeline while feeding us both instant noodles. Even though I'd built the first cash flow doc on a coffee-stained laptop at 2 a.m. Even though I'd said no to my own life so he could build his. I confronted Dylan that night. "You talked to them for 3 hours," I said, holding up the magazine. "You didn't mention me once?" He shrugged. Didn't even look up. It wasn't relevant to the business narrative. That's when it clicked. I wasn't part of the story anymore. Not to him. Not to his team. Not to the world watching. I had become a ghost inside my own life. Present, but unseen. Essential, but uncredited. And maybe that's how they wanted it. Quiet. Convenient. Forgettable. But they forgot one thing. Ghosts remember everything. I didn't explode. Didn't scream. Didn't throw the magazine across the room. I just sat there. The weight of it settled in layers: rage, sorrow, clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't shout. It whispers. and I heard it loud and clear. I had spent 7 years building a future someone else had already erased me from, and I wasn't going to beg to be written back in. I was going to prove I never left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, watching headlights crawl across our bedroom walls. By morning, I'd made a decision. I didn't go to work. Didn't text anyone back. Instead, I walked to the college library where I used to study finance. The building smelled the same: old paper, cold air, ambition. I found the same desk I always used to sit at, third row, near the emergency exit. And then I pulled out the blue binder, the one I'd hidden behind the tax law section. Inside, tucked between the pages of an old economics textbook, was the contract. 7 years ago, I had drafted it in a small cafe in Paris. The day after Dylan landed his first meeting with a French angel investor. He was euphoric. He'd had too much champagne. He kept saying, "This is it. This is the start of everything." I was terrified. I had sacrificed everything to support him: my job offers, my financial security, my future. And I needed protection. A woman I met at that cafe, an expat with a sharp suit and sharper eyes, told me about a Parisian attorney who specialized in startup partnerships. I met with him the next morning while Dylan slept off his celebration. Together, we drafted a document. It outlined my financial contributions, my unpaid labor, my sweat equity, and it granted me 49% ownership in any business venture we launched together. The signature page bore both our names, signed after a second round of wine. At the time, Dylan thought it was an investor formality. I didn't correct him. He signed it smiling, toasting our empire. He forgot. I never did. And now, that forgotten document was my scalpel. Not to wound, but to cut truth clean through the lies. I left the library and walked straight to a corner law firm I'd passed every day on my way to the diner. There was a brass plate on the door: Marilyn Chin, attorney at law, family and asset law. I remembered the name. A diner regular once handed me her card, just in case, she'd said. It was time. I stepped inside. The receptionist looked up. "I'm here to see Miss Chin," I said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but she'll want to see this." I placed the document gently on the counter. 10 minutes later, I was in Marilyn's office. She scanned the pages, expression unreadable. "This is legally binding," she said finally. "And notarized." Her eyes met mine. "You ready to go to war?" "No," I said. "I'm ready to be heard." That night, I told no one. Not Dylan. Not Susan. Not Rebecca. They went on smiling, building, celebrating, thinking I was gone. Thinking I was small. Thinking I had nothing. But I had this. And soon, I'd have more. Because erasing me wasn't just cruel. It was stupid. They forgot I kept the receipts. And now, they were going to remember. The courtroom was colder than I expected. White walls. Polished wood. The kind of silence that hums. I sat beside Marilyn, my palms flat on my lap. She wore a navy suit and calm-like armor. I wore the only blazer I owned, 2 seasons old and a little too loose. Dylan walked in 20 minutes late, flanked by a team of 4 lawyers. Rebecca trailed behind, all sleek ponytail and neutral expression. Susan followed last, dripping pearls and satisfaction. No one looked at me. That made it easier. The judge, gray-haired, no nonsense, opened with formality. Reynolds versus Reynolds. Petition for dissolution of marriage and division of assets. Dylan's lead attorney stood. My client built SmartSeeds from the ground up. He's offered a generous settlement. The claim to ownership by Mrs. Reynolds has no legal basis. He said my name like I didn't belong to the company. Like I was an unrelated party. Then they called Dylan to the stand. He painted himself as the lone genius. He spoke of long nights and bold risk. He said I built something from nothing. When asked about me, he smiled. She was supportive, he said. She helped with groceries. She worked side jobs. Then the smile sharpened. But she never worked for the company. Not in any formal way. His words settled over me like frost. 7 years, and this was what I had become, his grocery girl. Then came the question that cracked it open. "Mr. Reynolds, are you aware of any written agreements between you and your wife regarding ownership or equity?" His lawyer jumped in. "No such document exists." Dylan nodded in agreement. She was never involved in that side of things. Marilyn stood. Calm. Steady. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit a document into evidence." I reached into my bag and handed her the envelope. The Paris contract. Notarized. Signed. Dated. Gasps echoed across the room. Susan stiffened. Rebecca's jaw twitched. Dylan went pale. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Reynolds, is this your signature?" He hesitated. There was champagne involved, he said weakly. It was our honeymoon. I wasn't fully aware. The judge didn't flinch. You were aware enough to meet with investors that day. Marilyn stepped forward. This contract recognizes my client's 49% stake in Smart Seeds. It outlines her financial contributions, labor, and legal entitlement to equity. It is binding under international and U.S. business law. The judge leaned back. Well then, she said. That changes everything. Dylan said nothing. Susan looked like she might shatter. Rebecca refused to look at me. I just sat there. Quiet. Steady. Finally, visible. The judge recessed for 30 minutes. Dylan's lawyers huddled like bees in suits. Marilyn and I sat quietly, side by side. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. The tide had turned. When we reconvened, the judge didn't waste words. The document is valid, she said. Mrs. Reynolds is recognized as a 49% owner of Smart Seeds and its related assets. Her gavel came down. Sharp. Final. Both parties will attend mediation to determine structure, buyout options, or joint management going forward. And, just like that, I was no longer the extra. I was half the company. On record. In law. In ink. Dylan didn't look at me. Rebecca slipped out the side door. Susan clutched her purse like it was a lifeline. Outside, reporters were already gathering. Marilyn handled them with precision. I stood still. Let it all wash over me. Someone asked how it felt to win. I didn't answer. Because that wasn't the right word. This wasn't a win. It was a return. A return to truth. To dignity. To myself. We spent weeks in mediation. Dylan wanted me out. Clean. Quiet. Gone. I offered him a structured buyout, 5 years, at market value. Fair. Professional. Unemotional. He signed. Reluctantly. Then left the room without a word. The money came in waves. It wasn't everything I lost. But it was enough. Enough to restart. Enough to remember who I was before I made myself smaller for someone else's dream. I opened my own firm. Chin and Company. Financial advising. We help women founders protect what's theirs on paper and in practice. Prenups. Founders' agreements. Sweat equity clauses. The things no one teaches you until it's too late. The first few clients came from word of mouth. Then came referrals. Then came features. Then Forbes. They named me one of the women reshaping startup finance. I didn't smile when I read it. I just exhaled. Like my lungs had been underwater for years. At the new office, I framed a single photo on my desk. It wasn't from my wedding. It wasn't of Dylan. It was me, 23 years old, graduating from Wharton. Eyes bright. Shoulders back. That girl thought she'd have to choose. Love or ambition. Support or self. She didn't. She just needed time. And one signed document that no one thought she'd keep. 1 year later, I got flowers. White lilies. No note. 2 hours later, an envelope arrived at the office. Handwritten. Familiar. Inside was a short card. Congratulations on the Forbes piece. You deserved it. D. Just an initial. Like we'd never shared a life. Like he hadn't once called me his future. I didn't respond. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some are better left as ashes. But I kept the card. Not out of sentiment. Out of reminder. A reminder of who I was when I gave everything. And who I became when I took it back. That night, I went out with friends, real ones. The kind who knew the messy middle, not just the glossy end. We ordered too many appetizers and laughed too loud. No one asked me about Dylan. No one needed to. Later, walking home, I paused at a crosswalk. The air was warm. The kind of night that feels like the beginning of something. My phone buzzed. An email from a new client. I heard your story. I think I need help before I disappear from my own. I smiled. This was the real return on investment. Not the payout. Not the press. But this quiet echo. This ripple effect. I built something, too. It just took me longer to see it. My voice. My boundaries. My worth. Not because he gave them to me, but because I reclaimed them. And this time, I'm not handing them over to anyone.